evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second episode of Nagaland Conservatory of Music podcast. It gives me immense pleasure tonight to invite your participation as we discuss and examine the impact of music in communities. Music as a medium of communication, as well as a medium of transmission of ideas, experiences, knowledge, and even of historical accounts. We can all appreciate that majority of the tribal societies rely on oral transmission of ideas. In many societies, there are no written historical documents, but rely entirely on what has been passed on from one generation to the other by the word of mouth. And in this process, there are various mediums involved. And we can appreciate tonight that in many of the societies amongst the tribals, music plays as a medium of transmission. We want to specifically study the case of the Naga tribes. In majority of the Naga tribes, if we look deeply into their roots, music is a way of life. We can safely say that the Naga is a singing tribe. Because in the olden days, our forefathers were very creative. Music was a medium of communication. For every occasion, there was a song. For example, at the birth of a child, at the marriage, for courtship, a song for cry of war, a song declaring peace, and so on and so forth. There are songs about the new moon. There are songs about the change of season. And the list can go on and on. Between disputes amongst communities or amongst villages, they would come and just sing through their arguments. These are all literatures that needs to be preserved. And given the efforts, especially by the younger generation, to transcribe this, to document this, this will become a rich storehouse of literature that we can all be so proud of. Now, on the medium of transmission of ideas, from our studies, we have discovered that many tribes, especially in the experience of the Ao tribe, we have noticed that music also plays as a medium of transmission. In other words, historical accounts, which sometimes if it's just narrated by speech, can become boring. But one medium that our forefathers adapted was to store those narratives in the form of songs, and they would sing it over and over again in the presence of the younger one. And this medium succeeded because of the presence of the Morong system. For those of you who do not know what Morong system is, Morong was primarily a male dormitory which served as an educational institution, a social institution, where the youth of the village would assemble every night after the day's work, and where they would sit with the elderlies, and the elders would sing these songs for them, and they will respond the chants that the elders would first chant. Thereby, we can see a lot of music that has leader and group responsive singings. Now, by virtue of singing it over and over again, it gets imbibed in their memory. And by virtue of its practices, they get versed in it and becomes a way of life for them. Now, this idea of repetitive practice, we can cite an example on how kids at a very tender age, when they start school, even before they could read the alphabets, they start to learn singing the songs, singing the nursery rhymes. How? Because of repetitive lessons being taught by the teacher. And by virtue of singing it over and over again, it get permanently stored in your memory. That's how it sustains the test of time. It overcomes the challenges of memory lapse. For example, majority of us, many of us, can recite almost all the nursery songs that we learned at a very tender age when we could not even read or speak properly. This is just an example. And that's how it was in the olden days. The men would assemble not only on particular occasions, but on a regular intervals, or almost every night. They would assemble and sing it over and over again. That's how it got imbibed in its memory. Unfortunately, with the advent of modernity, this has become a threat. The Morong system was discouraged because of the political situations, and perhaps by the teachings of that age. To a great extent, efforts of certain understandings, due to certain understandings, were made to stop its continuity. And because of which, there is a big generation gap in terms of the transmission of ideas from one generation to the other. My dear friends, all these historical accounts, experiences of the past, informations of the past, which were stored in songs, now poses a grave risk of losing its worth, or even worse. Because the generation who got it from their parents, due to a lack of an opportunity to practice its continuity, are now experiencing memory lapses. And for those of them who knows it still vividly, unless we transcribe it, document it, record it, those informations will die with them and will be buried, and for us to never hear about it or see it. My dear friends, tonight podcast wishes to encourage especially the younger generation. Realize the value of these songs which were some mediums of communications. And as a medium of transmissions, the informations that were stored in the songs, we need to start documenting it. We need to preserve it and explore the possibilities on how we can develop it contextually. So tonight, we encourage our viewers to take time out to spend time listening to the elders. Document them. Record it on your phones. And take the help of experts who can help you transcribe it. Transcribe the text correctly. Transcribe the music correctly, so that it becomes educational resources for the generations to come. Thank you so much for patiently listening to this argument, and I hope that it will serve us as a point of motivation for all of us. Tonight's featured performer is Vivi Yeptomi. Vivi Yeptomi started performing at a very young age. She is a versatile singer, comfortable in various genres. She joined Nagaland Conservatory as a student in voice major 4 years ago. And I can very boldly say that she is one of the rarest talents that you will see in this part of the world. Sometimes how we wish that big production houses, especially operas, would take notice of the talents such as her that we have plenty in this part of the world. She'll be performing 2 pieces. Number 1 is O Mio, Babino Caro by Puccini. And second is Ach Ich Fühl's by Mozart. Please click the link below and enjoy these beautiful renditions by Miss Vivi Yeptomi.